Welcome to Ali Fitness Podcast, a weekly production all about bringing health into fitness. Olivier BAILLET has over 15 years of racing experience in triathlon, 25 years in running, and started squad swimming at the age of 7. His most remarkable achievements are too many to list, but let's just say he's qualified several times for the Ironman World Championships, and he's very well known in Asia for not only being an amazing swimmer and triathlete, but also he's one of the most well-respected coaches. And Olivier, it's such a pleasure to have you on today. Thank you for coming.
Yes, thanks for inviting me, Ali, and very happy to be here.
Excellent. So if you didn't already recognize the accent, Olivier is French, but currently lives in Hong Kong. And like I said, is very well known as a coach, but hasn't always been known for a coach. And Olivier, tell us, and you're probably questioning yourself as well, why and how did you become a coach?
Yeah, as you said, it wasn't obvious in the beginning. I was in banking for almost 2 decades, having a decent career and a job that spanned over 6 countries. But at the age of 40, I really hit the midlife crisis that a lot of us have at some point. And I realized I needed to make a big shift in my life. So I went to a life coach or a business coach and did a bit of research about myself. And I realized that in every single job I had done in banking, what I really enjoy most was teaching the newcomers and coaching all the new people and teach them on the job everything I knew. Although it wasn't in part of my job definition, it's always what I used to do. So I started to think, well, that's funny. I have that pattern that repeats itself in like 5 or 6 different jobs. Maybe I should try to see further where this comes from, and maybe a new a potential source for a new job. And then on the side, I was coaching friends for triathlon because they knew me and they wanted to get some tips, and I was really enjoying very, very much. And 3 years after, at the age of 43, then I was really ready to quit the bank, and I knew I wanted to become a coach based on the work I had done before with that business coach. I did a master in sports management to make sure I knew how to set up a proper business in the sports industry. Did a certification with the Triathlon Association for coaching, but that was more to reassure myself that really to get the knowledge because I already knew quite a bit, and started coaching as a living. And I was lucky enough because, as you mentioned, I'm relatively well known in Asia for my triathlon results. And as soon as I mentioned to people that I was about to set up my coaching business, I got people interested straight away. So that gave me a bit of comfort that I was at the right place at the right moment.
Wow. And so was it a big leap then just to quit banking at the age of 43 and know that income's no longer going to come in, and then move into, say, a Masters of Sports Management that you, I guess, a bit of unknown? How did that make you feel?
Yeah, of course, the financial aspect has always been an issue. I mean, you have to know that, to understand myself, that when I was in banking, I was in risk management. So I always see the potential drawback and risk in everything I do. So obviously getting from an NetSpac package to zero almost overnight was a big risk in my life. Well, luckily enough, my wife got a job in banking, and that gave us a bit of stability. But we have kids, we have the schools to pay, the rent. For those who don't know, Hong Kong is the most expensive city in the world to live in. So it's really not a very good place to start a business from zero, except that it's very easy to start a business because everything is designed, everything is easy. You can set up your proper company in 3 days. So there's pros and cons to set up a business in Hong Kong. So yeah, it put a lot of pressure on myself. Financially, it will never be like it was before. But one of the things that happened to me is that my father died right before I made my decision, and I was already ready to make the jump, but not quite. And then I realized, well, at least he's been happy doing what he wanted to. So maybe, I don't want to be there in 40 years in his position thinking, what if I had tried to be a coach? What if I had tried to be what I think I am? So that was the final straw that made me make the jump. Suddenly I thought, well, I really don't want to be at 80 years old thinking maybe I should have. So I just decided to give up the bank, taking the risk, obviously, but at least now my business is doing well. I know this was the right decision. And even if it hadn't been the right decision, I needed to try it and see it for myself. I couldn't stand the idea of being on my deathbed thinking, oh, maybe you should have tried. So that was the final straw and the final thing that made me make the jump. And I know it may sound very odd, but it was actually this that pushed me to the edge.
Yeah, great. And so I know you were very well known before you became a coach. And like you even mentioned, there were so many people lining up for you to coach that you could have actually jumped straight into it without doing that sports management. Why did you choose to actually become qualified and do the sports management? And did you find that helped?
Well, the sports management thing is, there were several reasons. I actually did a master in finance and management in my early 20s. So let's say I had the basics and, working in bank, I knew everything about, planning and financial planning and all these kind of things. So I didn't need to do a master. It wasn't a prerequisite, but I wanted to give me 6 months to breathe, basically. I didn't want to go from banking to looking out for clients with no transition. So I took these 6-7 months as a transition. I also met new people. That was a really way to breathe. And I choose a master in sports management where the biggest the biggest emphasis was on entrepreneurship. So actually, I came to this master's with the idea to develop the business model of my company, whose name I had already, Beyond the Line, Endurance Coaching and Consulting, and actually put this project through teachers and other students and help it grow during the 6 or 7 months of my master. And that's what I did. Like the end of the year project was Beyond the Line, Endurance Coaching and Consulting, coaching people, getting to companies, also selling programs for them and all this kind of stuff. So before I started, it had been reviewed by teachers, who are, very, who themselves have been entrepreneurs or are entrepreneurs, and through people in the sports industry. So I knew that there has been this first filter, and some of my ideas, which might have been a bit crazy and everything, they just shut them down and said, no, this is not going to work. You should concentrate on online coaching. This seems to be a good model for you, and given your expertise, this should work. So when I started, I was very reassured. As I said, I was in risk management, I would say, not worried, but I like to have reinsurance when I do things, and that gave me a reassurance. Now, for the coaching side and the degree I had in Australia, it was more for the potential clients to know that I've done something. But it's a weekend coaching class. You don't really learn much. Like, I had been coaching myself for 15 years. I know all the principles of periodization. I know how to deal with people. So honestly, I really didn't learn anything during that weekend. And what I discovered is that nobody ever asked me about any degrees or any proof that I had some coaching certification. So it didn't bring me anything. Again, it was just a nice breather, a nice weekend, seeing new people. It's always good to go back to the classroom and teach new things. That's what I'm trying to do all the time, still now. But this part, no, it didn't bring me anything apart from, as I said, a weekend with new people in a sport I love.
Interesting. Okay. So you've already mentioned that you're a father and a husband. And I know that you understand the constraints of your clients who are often in a similar situation. So how would you describe your style of training?
Yeah, I think the way I sell myself and I market myself is that compared to like world-class level athletes who become coaches, I've never been to that level, but I went to Kona 3 times while still being a banker, and I just qualified a 4th time this year. But during these 3 times when I was a banker, I was under tremendous constraints. had a wife, had kids, had a lot of business trips. I was in internal audits for a while. I was traveling 4 or 5 months a year, and I managed to qualify to Kona for that. So all my clients are very busy executives, and they have their own constraints. So I relate to that very, very much. Like if someone comes to me and say, oh, I have a business trip to London for 3 days, only have a pretty average gym to use, and then I will have business trips. I know they will not control their food. They will not control the number of hours they sleep. They will be jet lag and everything. So I know very well how to adapt their program for this session, for this period. And then when they come back, I know they will be jet lag in the other way. So I know to be gentle and everything. So I'm not really working with top class athletes. I'm working with very, very driven people who know what they want, who know where they want to be, but unfortunately don't have usually the time and the energy to do that well. Probably if they were in good condition, they would do that very well because they are very driven. So the way I coach them is that I'm trying to be as pragmatic as possible. I have in mind what would be the ideal training plan for them, but then I adapt to reality. I'm not trying to push them to the limit and say, you should get into my boxes. You should be exactly the way I want and do exactly the way you should do. I just know that they have constraints. So I adapt all the time. I try to always push them a little bit because obviously some people have lifestyle that if I match exactly their lifestyle, basically they can only train 3 hours a week. So, I have to be, in between, take into account their constraints and where I want them to be. But yeah, I'm very flexible and I'm coaching people of very different abilities, from Olympic distance to Ironman distance. Some people who want to go to Kona, some people who want to go to 70.3 World Championship. I even have some beginners who want to do their first sprint, and I also coach runners and cyclists. And so I adapt my coaching style, and that's where I think I've changed most over the years, is that I've learned to deal with very, very different situations, and why I know exactly what to do to get them to the best level. I also know exactly that it is not going to happen for most of the people because they just don't have the capacity, the time and the energy left after they have to do everything that has to do with work and family.
And I think that's why you're so successful and people keep coming back to you, is because you adapt the workload to suit their whole lifestyle. It's a real holistic approach. And so I think that's great. And what style of coaching would you say that you do, or does it vary depending on your client and their goals?
Well, one of the things I've improved over the years really is, the more I communicate, the better coach I am. And the more I try to understand what goes through someone's mind, the better I am. And I value a lot. Like, I want people to enjoy themselves and stay in the sport for decades, just like I am. I started as a young swimmer, and I've been doing endurance sport for 40 years now. So I want people to enjoy that. So I'm a coach who's giving, some kind of orders, but also I'm very careful to make sure that people find it enjoyable and stay in the sport. So I'm not making friends with them, but I'm trying to progressively understand better their life, so that I know what's going on in their mind, what's going on in their body, and I become a better coach. So I'm really trying to build a very good relationship based on confidence and exchange. I also value a lot discussions. And while I probably know most of my athletes because I've been doing that for years, you're always learning. And that's also the spirit I'm trying to keep learning from my athletes. So I would say, I'm a flexible coach. I listen a lot. I always keep the communication open, and I'm very accessible. But on the other hand, as I said in the beginning, I know what to do for them to be successful. And sometimes, I just have to switch and say, I'm sorry, but this, you absolutely need to do it. I'm not going to tell you this very often, but this is key. and you can't avoid that. But that happens very, very rarely. Usually, I just try to make sure my coaching is in line with the constraints of my clients.
Interesting that you say that you're very good at listening and having discussions with your clients. So being an online coach, how do you do that?
Yeah, it's a good question. My business model is indeed online coaching, which means that theoretically, I just send them a training plan through a very nice and very user-friendly app, which is called Training Peaks. And then people do their training, and I look at what they do. And normally, this would be the end of it for online coaching, with maybe one call every week or every month, depends on what the other coaches do. But I do much more than that. I give my athletes full access to me, so they can WhatsApp me all the time. I'm trying to answer everything within 12 up to 24 hours, and so that the athletes have the impression that I'm there, which is true for the athletes who are in Hong Kong. They can call me, and then we have a coffee and everything. But I have athletes also in Singapore, in Macau, now Kuala Lumpur, and I've got former athletes who are now in France or in New York City. So, but I'm still keeping the communication open. And, nowadays we have many ways to communicate. It can be Skype, it can be WhatsApp, it can be phone. So I'm really trying to have that personal relationship with everybody. And I know I am valued a lot for that. A lot of the people I coach come and go. Like they do their Ironman, they get a lot of pressure for 6 months, 5 months, 7 months, and then they want some time off. And I let them go. I will never retain them. And they always come back because they're happy with my coaching, but also because they're happy with the communication we had, and also because I think they appreciate me as a person. Some people also value a lot the personal relationship I'm giving them. Some just don't want to hear about it. They just want a training plan. But 80% of the people I work with actually value the communication and the personality of their coach. And that's where I'm probably the best.
Well, I must say, I know lots of online coaches, and I don't know any apart from yourself that offer that level of service where you can WhatsApp anytime and get a response within 24 hours. You can call and obviously use lots of different forms of technology to get in touch, and coffee if you're in Hong Kong. So that's obviously a major USP for your coaching services. So that moves me to my next question. You mentioned that you use a lot of different sort of technologies such as Training Peaks and WhatsApp. And you said that you look at the clients, what they've done and measure what they've done. What measurements or what do you look at when let's say, for example, you've got a plan for the day, they go and do that plan and their results come in through, say, Training Peaks. What do you look at in Training Peaks to determine whether they did a good session and that sort of thing? And then how do you give feedback on that?
Well, very, very pragmatically, there's first the data. So the data get uploaded from their Garmin watch. Usually they use Garmin, but it can be Polar or Shunto. And then I can see as soon as they finish their workout what they've done. So the very basic thing to do is compare the pace, the distance, the heart rate, the power, if they have a power meter on the bike, that they've done compared to what I've told them to do. And that's a pretty straightforward way to know how things are going. But then what I like is like when they put a comment after the workout, like it felt really hard or it went all well, but in the end I couldn't finish the last one. And then in the comments I have the explanation of what I see in the data. Now Training Peaks offers a very few tools that are pretty useful also, but that can only be used if the data from the athletes are of very good quality, like if every workout has been recording over the last few months. And it's called the performance management chart. In this chart, I can see the level of fatigue that my athlete has, and we can very, very well play around with the training so that they are in optimum shape for their race. And I look at this very, very closely during the taper week, the last race week, to make sure that they get on race day with a good reserve of energy. So, and if I see that they are still tired, then the taper will be even lighter than what I thought I would be. Or if I see that they are almost too rested, then maybe in the last week I will give them one last big workout. And I'm playing with this. And again, it's all very personal. There's no rules. But statistically, people react more or less the same way in the last week. So that helped me to be much better than I was before with taper. So there's a lot of things, there's also the heart rate variability that I'm looking into, although I'm not a specialist yet, but that's something I want to add. I know there are some very basic apps on the phone that you can use. There's many other things I want to add, but I try to have an holistic approach. So when I started in 2000, I used a very basic grid from Joe Friel, where you would self-assess yourself, your level of fatigue, the quality of your sleep, the quality of your food, your stress level, all that, by hand. And that's what I used to do for 2 years. I just replicate the grid, and I would feel it every day. And what I discovered is that was a very good tool to see when I was getting sick. So for some of my athletes who tend to get sick often, I've asked them to do the same, feel a similar grid and self-accept themselves the way they feel. Because sometimes, this performance graph or maybe even the heart rate variability does not give the full picture. Sometimes your mood is horrible while your training is very good. And that in itself is an indicator of being tired or of potential problems in the near future. So I value a lot all the mind aspect of training, and I think most discoveries in the future will be in that field as well as the field of recovery. And because we don't have the tools yet, again, I value a lot the communication, and I'm trying to understand in which state of mind my client is when he's training. Obviously, I cannot be on everybody's back every day. It wouldn't be possible, and I think most people wouldn't want that. But there are some crucial times, like when we do some big weekends, or again near the taper, where this is getting very, very important. And then I get very much into people's life, trying to understand if they're going through stress with work and everything, to make sure they don't get injured or sick because they have they have stress that's created out of sport.
Yeah, very good point. And that's why a lot of coaches now are looking into HRV, and actually listen out to a podcast, previous podcast actually, with Jason Moore, the owner of Elite HRV, and he talks about the importance of HRV both for athletes and non-athletes. So absolutely recommend using HRV, and it sounds like you're looking into that. And I know also that in your earlier trainings, perhaps you didn't use power meters, but you're starting to use those a lot more now.
Yeah, well, actually, I think I started in 2010. So not being like one of the first in the world to use it, I started relatively early compared to most athletes. And this has completely changed my way of training myself, because as you may know, the heart rate is a good indicator, but it takes time to reach a certain zone. So for example, in short intervals like 30 seconds or 2 minutes or 3 minutes, you cannot really base it on heart rate, while you get instant feedback on power, and you get the watts immediately when you change your power. So it's a very much more refined way to train and also to coach. So when people have a power meter, I can see much more what's going on, and I can be a much better coach. Now, the problem with triathlon is like it's already a very costly sport, and you can always buy new toys and you can spend a fortune. So I've always avoided to, put pressure on my athletes to buy this or that, and because it's already a very expensive sport. But if they can afford it and they have an interest, power meter is definitely something that I would recommend. But it never comes from me. It has to come first from the athlete. And then when they ask me, what about a power meter? I say, well, if you can afford it, and if you really use the way I tell you to use it, then by all means buy it. Because it does make a difference. But it's not a prerequisite, Some coaches don't use it at all and have very good results. Some athletes don't use it at all and have very good results. But to me, I think it helps. And for online coaching, it helps tremendously because I get really a much more refined and precise and immediate feedback. So that helps a lot, yeah.
Great. So in terms of recovery, I guess, how important is recovery, and how do you know, apart from, I guess, talking to them, looking at their fatigue and TSS score, how do you know that your clients are well recovered?
Yeah, so in the beginning, I used to almost religiously put one day off in everybody's training plan a week and give an easier week every third or fourth week. And that was something I used to do automatically. Now I've changed that because everybody is different. Everybody life's constraints is different. Some people, I don't give them any day off and I just tell them, take a day off when you feel really horrible, or when you're stuck at work, or you had a bad night because of your baby or whatever. And I know it works well for them. Some people who have a much more organized and stable life, then I do give them a day and a week on a regular basis. But I also work, for example, with pilots. And pilots have incredibly complex timetables, and while they know it in advance, they cannot really take a week off or take a day off when I want them to. So I have to be very, very flexible and give them the recovery, for example, when they're flying and stuck somewhere in China anyway, they don't have anything to do apart from sleep. So this is the way I manage. Now, how do I know? It's very, very difficult because all the data we have, again, is based on training and stress score and everything. And this works in an ideal world, but in the real world, they can have a fight with their boss or with their wife or with their kids, and that's going to eat them alive for a few days. And they're going to be very, very tired. And maybe I won't be able to see it from the data because they are, strong-minded, they will still do the workouts. So that's when communications come. And as I said before, I'm a much better coach with people who communicate to me. So I build that relationship where they trust me enough to tell me, look, I've had an issue at work. They don't have to tell me what. I don't need to know. But they say, right now training is really a drag. I'm kind of suffering it. So I'm doing it, but take it into account. And that triggers some kind of alarm in my mind. Okay, I have to be careful because this can lead to, injury, burnout, overtraining and things like that. If they don't communicate with me, and not every athlete communicate that openly with me, then my job is limited. And then I'm not as good as I could be. So that's why I always insist and I always try to build a good relationship, frank and open. And if I fail, if the relationship remains just at the level of you're my coach, send me the program, I want to talk to you, then I can make mistakes. Like I can definitely give workouts that are too hard because the person is tired or is stressed, and I don't know that. So it's all about communication once again.
It's a great philosophy that you take. And I guess my question is, when you get a new client who you don't know, maybe you know of, or how do you first start to, I guess, let them know that you're open for communication? Do you ask them questions a lot, or how do you get them talking?
Well, it's first of all, I think patience is important. Some people will open up within the first week. Some it will take 2 or 3 months. Some don't talk but write. Some write but don't talk. It's just a question of listening to what they have to say and try to understand how they are wired. They are all different. I've worked with tens of people, and I wouldn't say two are the same. So it's really a question of being being very open to the way they want to communicate. And as I said, it's not always working. 80% of my people, I think, have a very good relationship with me, and I'm very satisfied. And I think I'm a very good coach for them because I manage to really tailor-made. But 10 to 15 to 20% sometimes, depend on the time of the year and statistics, they just use me as a training plan provider, and they don't get the value for money. Like I'm ready to give much more, but not all of them are interested. Still good clients for me, but we could do a better job together. Yeah.
Sure. And where does strength training come into play for your programs, or does it not?
Yeah, no, it has always been key for me. Since I started triathlon in 2000, I always been to the gym, minimum once a week. It's very rare that I stop altogether. And even when I started running in 95, I was starting to go to the gym, which was very, very unusual because in the 90s, runners would not go to the gym. So I'm a firm believer. It's very, very useful. I have many athletes who, for example, they ride 10, 12 hours a week, and they would be much better off riding 1 hour less and go to the gym. So one of my jobs, I would say, is convince them of the importance and interest and return on investment of spending 1 or 2 hours or 1.5 hours at the gym. And this is part of the things I'm trying, to convince them. Some have always been to the gym, so this is easy, but a lot of them are actually surprised and don't expect me to tell them, now you need to go to the gym. Now, again, we reached the limit of the online coaching. I don't want to, and I'm not in a position to go to the gym with all my athletes, especially if they're abroad, obviously. So that's where I like to work with a network of people I know, or people of good reputation who work in gyms but understand the specific constraints of endurance sports. And it's not obvious, not all personal trainers actually understand what we do with swim, bike, run. So, I try to make sure that they all have someone in their neighborhood, in their circle of friends, of people that actually understand the constraints that, they put on our body with the three sports. And so that they don't go to the gym on their own and get injured or do the wrong thing, get a bit bulky, big biceps and no triceps, and which would be useless for swimming. So this is definitely something I believe in. I myself experiment a few things like body pump classes, especially in winter when my motivation is a bit low. And I have included kettlebell sessions, and I find them very, very useful because contrary to the regular machines, there's a lot of movement in them, a lot of cross section movements also. It's not only lateral, so it's a very, very good workout, and it's fun, which is very important because for a lot of us, including myself, just going to the gym and lift weight is not exactly my definition of fun.
Very, very good explanation there. And on that note, so you mentioned that you do kettlebells yourself, and I know you also have a healthy nutrition program for yourself, or you eat very healthily. So in terms of your clients, how much focus do you put on health as opposed to, say, fitness?
Yeah, well, thanks to my activity, I'm coming across with a lot of very, very high level athletes in running, swimming, biking, and triathlon. And I've noticed that a lot of them actually are not healthy. They may be the best runners in Hong Kong or the best swimmers in Hong Kong, but they don't look healthy and they are not healthy. They're always injured. Some have problems with nutrition. They don't eat enough or they eat too much. Some have a lot of up and down. So there's a lot of things that can be said about being at the top level of fitness is very different from being healthy. And a friend of ours here in Hong Kong community just had a heart attack, and he was a good cyclist. So that's a proof that the relationship is not automatic. So I like to, again, trigger discussions with my clients about nutrition, about sleep, a lot of us don't get enough sleep, and you cannot be healthy if you're not sleeping enough. So I think the holistic approach, once again, is very important. And being an online coach, again, it has its limit. I cannot get too much into people's life, but I can, throw some pointers, ideas, raise some comments, some doubts in people's mind. And then when they're ready, sometimes I can gently convince them to talk to a nutritionist that I know and I trust, to someone who does kettlebell or strength training, because I can feel that they are very imbalanced. Or sometimes even a life coach, like, a lot of people who do endurance sports have actually, they do that as an escape, but they are not, their mind is not very healthy either. So, and this is another topic, sports especially endurance sport, doesn't necessarily attract, I would say, the people who have the most healthy minds. Actually, it attracts a lot of crazy people, or borderline crazy. So we have to work on that also sometimes. And it would be very easy for me to give very hard training plans to people who just want to suffer. And there's a lot of people in triathlon who want to suffer. And because the more they suffer, the better they feel with themselves. But it has a limit, So sometimes I say, well, you want to talk about why you like so much suffering. Have you ever thought about it? Do you think it's normal? And so I'm just trying to send some pointers. I'm not a psychologist. This is not my role either. But yeah, I'm trying to have a more holistic approach than just swim, bike, run, period.
Wow. I love it. And I guess why maybe your training style is very successful, it's probably quite limited in that a lot of people don't choose to do that because they want an online coach and they don't want to put in maybe that extra time it takes, both physically, psychologically, the time it takes to actually be there and to actually communicate, because that's a lot of emotional and physical effort that it takes. So I wonder, as an athlete and a coach, do you find it difficult to do your own training, to get on with your own training?
Yeah, well, with the business model I've created, and providing full access to me, it does have a lot of drawbacks. Like, forget about the real holidays and the real weekend that doesn't exist anymore. But this is my choice. And this is my style, and this is how people like me and why they appreciate me. But I do have some flexibility. For example, before I had to be done with my training by 8 a.m. no matter what. Now I can go for a bike ride at 10 a.m. Work from 6 to 10. And, we live in a very flexible life again with WhatsApp and the phone and everything. I can work anytime in transport. So we have a lot of flexibility as online coaches. So am I training more than before? Some weeks less, some weeks yes, some weeks definitely no. But I had that extra flexibility that I didn't have. Now my results are not as good as before, but I don't think it has anything to do with my new life. It just has to do with my age. I'm now almost 47. And yeah, it's harder to get the same results. And most of my personal bests were done when I was 40, full-time bank employee, with a lot of stress and 2 small kids. So theoretically, it wasn't the best time of my life to be a fast athlete, but that was the case. Now I'm 46. My kids are a bit older. I have more flexibility, and I'm not as fast as I was. But I think I've found back the enjoyment that I had lost at some point, because when I was working, training was really an escape from a lot of frustration. I don't have that frustration anymore. I'm very happy with my job now, and I'm very happy with when I train too. So it's a much more balanced and healthy way to train. And I'm not searching the performance as I used to. It's okay for me sometimes just to participate. And what I like also is to explore, and this is no news. So, for example, there are some new sports like the swim run, which was initiated in Sweden, and it's growing all over the world. And I helped it develop in Hong Kong and hopefully across Asia. So I'm discovering some new sports and I'm helping them grow. And this is even more exciting than qualifying for Kona now. I am going to Kona this year, and I put all the emphasis on qualifying. But honestly, I think this is going to be, I cannot say it's going to be my last year because you never say never. But I think starting from next year onwards, I will spend more energy in new sports, maybe trying to develop more my swimming or my cycling or my running, but separately, and give a little bit of time away from triathlon, because I've been doing that for 17 years now, almost every year, and I need a change. Yeah.
Watch out, cyclists, here he comes. So what's the most rewarding part of your job, Olivier?
Well, that's pretty easy. One of the biggest frustration I had when I was in banking is the impression that I wasn't making a mark, a dent in the universe. I was just doing stuff in a very, very big corporate, and I was just a cog. And very often I was instrumentalized, and I was using all my energy on my brain power, on my creativity for things that were really not useful to anybody. I'm barely caricaturing like this. It's really the way I felt it. Now I'm bringing a lot of joy and happiness and fulfillment to my athletes. And I'm also in a position where I can really give back, even give back for free. So I've done some crazy things for charity, like I swam 80 kilometers around Lantau Island for charity. And I'm now part of a program for, domestic helpers who learn to swim. We're about to launch a free run based on the idea of park run, was been very successful across the world for our small community here in Hong Kong neighborhood where I live. So I'm in a position now to really give back, and I don't expect anything to come back to me. I just do it because I think this is the right thing. And actually each time I do it, I get a lot of things in return. So it's like everybody's winning. I do it for free. I do it because I think it's the right thing. And then people come to me and give me a lot of stuff back. So it's a very exciting part of my life now. And I think it's a very common thing to do when you get to your 40s, to stop thinking about only you and thinking about the others, and get into more, all this charity world and giving back. And this is much more rewarding part of my life, definitely. And it's another reason why I'm so much happier now than I was before as a banker.
Well, you're definitely an inspiration to a lot of up-and-coming triathletes and just the average mum or dad that wants to get out there and do some sort of exercise. We love having you in the community, and I know that you're available for online coaching, and people can go to beyondthelinecoaching.com, and we'll put the link in the show notes. But before I let you go, Olivier, I have a bit of a personal question. Not sure of the answer myself. Do you have any tattoos?
No, I don't. No, I don't. I've thought about it. I will never do the M. tattoo that most Ironman finishers do, because it's a brand. It's like having a tattoo of Coca-Cola. I've been thinking of having tattoo that has to do with swimming, like a dolphin or something like that. But tattoo is forever. And I know I'm someone who likes to change. So 10 years ago, or already 13 years ago, I gave up the banking to travel for 1 year. And I thought traveling would be with me for the rest of my life, and that would be my driver. And eventually I came back to banking and came back with my regular life. Now I'm an online coach for triathlon. It doesn't mean in 5 years something new will happen in my life. So no, I don't have any tattoo yet. I think if I put one, it will have to do with my spiritual quest, which is still something in development. But it wouldn't have to do with sports or the Ironman brands or anything like that. And that would be something probably that I will keep hidden and just for myself. Yeah.
Excellent. Very interesting answer. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show, and hopefully we'll get you back for a part 2 at some stage.
I would love to. Thanks for inviting me.
Excellent. Thanks, Olivier.
Thanks, Ali.
For all the resources and show notes from today's episode, please go to www.ali.fitness. If you liked today's episode, please show your appreciation by going to iTunes, give us a 5-star review and subscribe.